Hey guys, let's slip into the gritty streets of Rome, 125 CE, where the sun's barely up, and your day's already a mess. You're not waking up in a marble villa with silk curtains and a personal poet to sing you awake. No, you're sprawled in a third-floor insula, Rome's version of a budget apartment block, and trust me, it's less charming loft and more fire hazard with a view. The air hits you first, thick with smoke, mildew, and the kind of human funk that makes you miss deodorant like it's a lost lover. Somewhere down the hall, a baby's wailing, chickens are clucking like they're auditioning for a barnyard opera, and a guy's yelling about who stole his figs. Welcome to your morning alarm, no snooze button included. Your eyes creak open, and you're staring at a ceiling that looks like it's debating whether to collapse today or tomorrow. The room's no bigger than a modern walk-in closet, with stone walls that sweat in summer and turn to ice in winter. You're lying on a mattress stuffed with straw and regrets, and let's just say the straw's not the only thing crawling in there. Lice are your roommates now, and they don't pay rent. The blanket draped over you smells like damp wool that's been through too many rainy seasons, and it's about as comforting as a hug from a cactus. You roll over, hoping for a breeze, but all you get is a whiff of something that's either your neighbor's cooking or a city-wide hygiene crisis. There's no window to let in the morning light, just a sad little hole in the wall that's more of a suggestion than an actual vent. It lets in a mix of smoky air, the occasional pigeon who thinks your floor's a hotel, and the distant shouts of street vendors already haggling over fish guts. That's right, pigeons are your interior decorators, and their design aesthetic is chaos. You're tempted to shoo one away, but it glares at you like it's got squatter's rights. Historians still argue over how many insulae crumbled each year under the weight of shoddy construction and pigeon ambition, but let's just say your landlord's not winning any safety awards. Your possessions? A clay cup that's chipped but loyal, a tunic that's seen better days, and, if you're feeling fancy, a wooden comb that's more splinter than style. No dresser, no mirror, no motivational wall art saying, "Seize the day." Your room's as decorated as a prison cell, and the vibe is less cozy and more survival mode. You sit up, straw poking through your tunic like nature's acupuncture, and your stomach growls, but hold that thought, cooking's a no-go here. One stray spark could turn this whole insula into a Roman barbecue, and fire codes are about 1,000 years from being invented. Downstairs, someone's baking bread, and the smell wafts up, teasing you with carbs you can't afford. It's like the universe is saying, starve, but sniff this first. The walls are so thin you might as well be living in your neighbor's heads. On one side, a guy's praying to Jupiter with the enthusiasm of a morning talk show host. On the other, a couple's arguing about who forgot to empty the chamber pot, and, oh no, now they're not arguing, and you wish you had earplugs. It's like living in a reality show with no mute button. You try to focus, but the air's heavy, laced with the perfume of unwashed humanity and a hint of lead dust from the city's fancy new plumbing. Yeah, lead pipes were Rome's big innovation, because nothing says eternal empire like slow-motion poisoning. You swing your legs off the mattress, and your feet hit a floor that's cold, gritty, and probably plotting against you. Somewhere out there, a centurion's barking orders, probably at some poor soul who's already regretting their life choices. You're not even out the door yet, and you're sweaty, itchy, and wondering if you can call in sick to the Roman grind. Spoiler, you can't. This is 125 CE, and sick leave is just code for starve quietly. The city's alive outside, buzzing with vendors shouting prices and carts rattling over cobblestones, but inside your insula, it's a different kind of buzz, one that says, get up, or this place will eat you alive. Let's talk about that insula for a second. These multi-story death traps were Rome's answer to urban housing, thrown together with mud, prayers, and the kind of optimism that ignores gravity. The higher the floor, the poorer the tenant, and you're up on the third, which means you're not just broke, you're gambling with structural integrity. One spilled jug of olive oil from the guy above, and your ceiling's coming down like a bad metaphor. In 125 CE, a fire swept through Rome's Aventine Hill, torching dozens of insulae and leaving thousands homeless, because apparently, flammable was the city's architectural theme. You don't know that yet, but you feel it in the creak of every stair. You glance at the corner, where your chamber pot sits, silently judging you like it's got better things to do. That's your bathroom, by the way. No porcelain throne, no lavender air freshener, just a clay pot that's about to make your morning even worse. You'll have to haul it downstairs soon, but for now, you're just trying to psych yourself up for the day. It's not like you've got a motivational podcast to pump you up. Your only hype man is the guy outside screaming about discounted fish heads, and he's not exactly inspiring. Here's the kicker: you're not a senator, not a gladiator, not even a moderately successful sandal salesman. You're just another face in Rome's overcrowded tenements, trying to survive a city that's equal parts marvel and misery. The empire's at its peak, building aqueducts and conquering half the world, but for you, it's all about dodging pigeons and not dying before lunch. Could you hack it? Probably not. Modern you, with your memory foam mattress and 3-step skincare routine, would be begging for a time machine by noon. But for now, take a deep breath. Well, maybe not, the air's awful, and let's stumble toward the next part of your Roman adventure. You're still in that insula, and the morning's not getting any kinder. Your stomach's grumbling, but food's a distant dream, and the city's noise is creeping into your skull like an uninvited guest. You shuffle toward the door, dodging a stray straw that somehow lodged itself in your sandal. It's not footwear, it's a cry for help, offering less support than a motivational quote on a Monday. You're already dreaming of a world with arch support and climate control, but Rome's got other plans, and they involve sweat, stairs, and a whole lot of regret. Let's zoom out for a second. These insulae were Rome's big idea for housing the masses, and by masses, I mean everyone who wasn't rich enough to own a villa with a private fountain. Think of them as the ancient equivalent of a sketchy motel, except instead of bedbugs, you've got lice, and instead of a continental breakfast, you've got existential dread. They were built fast and cheap, stacked high to cram as many people as possible into Rome's sprawling urban mess. The ground floor might house a shop selling questionable sausages, but up here on the third floor, it's just you, your clay cup, and a ceiling that's one bad storm away from becoming your blanket. You pause at the door, bracing for the chaos outside. The street's alive with the kind of energy that makes modern rush hour look like a yoga retreat. Vendors are screaming about their wares: figs, fish, maybe a knockoff tunic if you're lucky. A cart rumbles by, probably hauling wine or bricks, and you're already picturing the traffic jam when it inevitably crashes into a stray goat. Rome's roads were engineering marvels, sure, but they were also open sewers, collecting whatever the city decided to toss out, from spoiled garum to last night's bad decisions. Step wrong, and your sandals getting a baptism you didn't sign up for. Back to that pigeon. It's still there, strutting across your floor like it owns the place. You're half tempted to negotiate a lease with it, but it flaps off through the air hole, leaving you to wonder if it's got a better life than you. Fun fact: pigeons were so common in Rome that some folks kept them for messages or snacks, but yours is just here to mock you. It's like living with a feathered influencer who knows you can't afford its lifestyle. And that air hole. It's not just a pigeon portal, it's your only shot at fresh air, except fresh means a mix of smoke from nearby fires and the distinct tang of a city that hasn't discovered sanitation. You're not alone in this misery, by the way. Insulae were home to thousands, from laborers like you to families scraping by on bread and hope. In 125 CE, Rome's population was pushing 1 million, and most of them were packed into these rickety towers, dodging leaks and praying their neighbors didn't burn the place down. Fires were so common that some historians think entire neighborhoods vanished yearly, leaving folks like you to rebuild with nothing but a singed tunic and a bad attitude. The debate rages on about how many of these buildings actually stood the test of time versus how many just gave up and collapsed, but you're not exactly feeling optimistic about your odds. You take a step toward the stairs, already dreading the descent. They're narrow, creaky, and slick with who knows what, like a Roman obstacle course designed to humble you. You're not just walking to the street, you're gambling with gravity. And for what? A day of hauling bricks or dodging carts, all while the city hums along, oblivious to your struggle. Rome's out there building empires, but you're just trying to build a life, one grimy morning at a time. Could you handle another day of this? Nah, you'd be Googling time travel before the sun hits noon, begging for a world with Wi-Fi and washable blankets. Will to live. That straw mattress from last time? It's still poking you like it's got a personal grudge, and the air's still a cocktail of smoke, sweat, and yesterday's bad decisions. You're itchy, you're still in your third-floor insula, Rome, 125 CE, and the morning's already testing your hungry and dreaming of a world with flush valves. But Rome's got other plans, and they start with the least glamorous part of your day, the chamber pot. Yeah, that clay pot in the corner, squatting there like it's judging your life choices, is your bathroom, and it's about to make your morning feel like a low-budget horror flick. You shuffle toward it, sandals slapping against the gritty floor, and every step reminds you how much you miss indoor plumbing. There's no toilet in this insula, no sparkling porcelain, no pine-scented air freshener. Just this pot, chipped and stained, staring up at you like it knows all your secrets. It's not even a fancy one. Some rich folks have pots with painted vines or clever Latin mottos, but yours is just a grumpy old clay bucket that's seen too much. You do what you gotta do, trying not to think about the logistics, but let's just say privacy's not a thing when your walls are thinner than a politician's promise. The neighbors are still at it, one's chanting to Venus, another's yelling about a lost sandal, and you're pretty sure they heard everything. Now comes the real challenge. Getting that pot downstairs without turning your morning into a tragedy. You grab it, careful not to slosh, and head for the door. The stairs are waiting, narrow and slick with a mix of spilled wine, olive oil, and who knows what else. They're less a staircase and more a Roman obstacle course, designed to punish anyone who dares to have a full chamber pot. You take a step, then another, gripping the pot like it's a holy relic, but the insula's not on your side. The whole building creaks like it's laughing at you, and you're half convinced it's one bad vibe away from collapsing. Historians still argue over how much street waste like this fueled Rome's disease rates, but you're too busy praying for balance to care. You make it to the ground floor, miraculously unsoiled, and step into the street. Rome's awake now, and it's not gentle about it. The air hits you like a slap, thick with the smell of fish sauce, smoke, and something that's probably a dead rat under a cart. Your job's to empty the pot into the street gutter, a shallow trench that's Rome's idea of sanitation. It's already brimming with contributions from your neighbors, a soupy mix of waste and regret that flows toward the Tiber like a very sad river. You tip the pot, trying not to splash your sandals, but a stray drop lands anyway, and now you're wondering if you can just burn these shoes and start over. The gutter's so gross it makes modern landfills look like botanical gardens, and you're pretty sure it's breeding the next plague. Here's the quirky bit, that chamber pot's not just a toilet, it's practically a personality in your life. Some Romans named theirs, like it was a pet, whispering sweet nothings to it in the dark. Yours doesn't have a name, but it's got attitude, glaring at you every morning like it's saying, "Really? This again?" You're tempted to chuck it into the gutter and be done, but pots aren't cheap, and you're not exactly swimming in sesterces. Besides, there's a law against littering pots. Rome's got rules for everything, even your bathroom habits. Dump it wrong, and some vigiles patrol might fine you, assuming they're not too busy extorting a baker down the street. The street's a circus now. A vendor's screaming about figs, waving them like they're gold, while a cart loaded with amphorae rumbles by, nearly clipping a stray dog. Somewhere, a centurion's shouting at recruits, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. You dodge a kid running with a basket of leeks, only to nearly trip over a pile of something that's definitely not mud. The gutter's not the only hazard. Streets double as dumping grounds, and nobody's sweeping up. In 125 CE, a big flood swamped Rome's lowlands, turning gutters like this into cesspools that drowned entire neighborhoods in filth. You don't know that yet, but you feel the city's grime creeping into your soul with every step. You're supposed to head back upstairs, but the smell of baking bread stops you cold. Cooking's banned in insulae to prevent fires, but someone's breaking the rules, and the aroma's like a siren song. It's probably coming from a ground floor taberna, one of those shops that doubles as a kitchen for folks too poor to own an oven. The bread's panis rusticus, dense and gritty, but right now, it smells like heaven. You'd kill for a bite, but your coin purse is lighter than your hopes, and the baker's not running a charity. You linger, sniffing the air like a dog outside a butcher shop, then trudge back toward the stairs, pot in hand, already dreading tomorrow's encore. Back in the insula, you set the pot down, and it's like the room sighs in relief. The air's no better, still smoky, still sour, but you're starting to get used to it, which is its own kind of tragedy. You glance at your tunic, hoping it's clean enough for the day, but there's a suspicious stain that wasn't there yesterday. Laundry's a whole other ordeal, involving public fountains and a lot of elbow grease, so you decide to just live with it. Rome's not exactly a fashion runway, and nobody's judging your outfit when they're all dodging the same street sludge you are. You're not alone in this chamber pot saga. Every tenant in this insula's doing the same dance, hauling their pots down creaky stairs, cursing the gods for inventing mornings. Rome's a city of 1,000,000, and most of them are packed into these rickety tenements, sharing the same gutters, the same smells, the same quiet rage. The rich folks in their villas have slaves to handle this mess, but you? You're your own janitor, and the pay's terrible. Could you survive this daily grind? Nah, modern you would be sobbing into a latte by now, Googling how to invent plumbing on a phone that doesn't exist. You take a breath, well, a shallow one, because the air's still plotting against you, and brace for the next hurdle. The street's calling, with its vendors and carts and endless noise, but you're not ready. You're just a laborer in Rome's grand machine, and the city doesn't care if you're tired or gross or dreaming of a better mattress. For now, you've conquered the chamber pot, but the day's got more miseries lined up, and they're not taking prisoners. You're back in the grimy streets of Rome, 125 CE, fresh off your chamber pot victory, but don't get cocky, the day's got more humiliations queued up. Your tunic's already sporting a mystery stain, your sandals are plotting mutiny, and the city's stench is like a punch you can't dodge. You've emptied your pot into the gutter, where it joined the Tiber's saddest parade, but you're not done with bathroom adventures. Your insula's got no private toilet, so it's time to visit the public latrina, Rome's answer to sanitation that's less hygienic and more communal nightmare. Grab your courage, or at least your least favorite tunic, because this is about to get weird. The latrina's a short walk from your insula, tucked near a bustling market where vendors are yelling about figs and stray goats causing traffic jams. The air's thick with smoke, fish sauce, and the kind of odor that makes you question humanity's life choices. You weave through the crowd, dodging a cart piled with amphorae and a kid who's definitely pickpocketing someone. The latrina's a stone building, low and unassuming, but the vibe's all wrong, like a community center where nobody's happy to be there. You step inside, and it's like walking into a sauna, except instead of eucalyptus, it's the scent of 1,000 bad decisions, warmed by body heat and poor ventilation. Picture this, a long stone bench with a row of holes, each one a seat for a Roman who's way too comfortable with eye contact. Below the bench, a trough carries waste away, theoretically to the sewer, but it's more of a sluggish suggestion than a proper flush. You find an open spot, wedging yourself between a guy muttering about grain prices and a woman loudly complaining about her sciatica. Privacy. Not a chance. The latrina's a social hub, like a coffee shop where everyone's oversharing and nobody's got a filter. You try to focus, but the guy next to you's chewing olives, spitting pits into the trough like it's a game, and you're wondering if you can just hold it until next week. The main event here is the tersorium, Rome's infamous sponge on a stick, kept in a bucket of vinegar that's seen better days. You grab it, carefully, because it's shared, and hygiene is more of a vibe than a reality. The sponge's texture is, let's say, experienced, and the vinegar's less sanitizing and more slightly less gross. You do what you need to, trying not to think about the fact that this stick's been on a first-name basis with half the neighborhood. Historians still bicker over whether the tersorium was a disease vector or a vinegar-fueled triumph of Roman ingenuity, but you're leaning toward plague stick as you set it back in the bucket. You're done, but there's no escaping the social scene. The olive guy's now debating politics with a sandal maker across the bench, and their gestures are way too enthusiastic for this setting. Someone's humming a tune about Jupiter, off-key and relentless, while another guy's trying to sell homemade socks to anyone who'll listen. It's like a networking event, except the dress code's tunics and the refreshments are regret. You stand, hoping to slip out unnoticed, but the sciatica lady catches your eye and starts ranting about her landlord. You nod, because arguing in a latrina feels like a lose-lose situation, and edge toward the exit. Hand-washing's next, but don't get your hopes up. There's a communal basin by the door, filled with water that's murkier than your future. No soap, no towels, just a quick rinse that leaves your hands feeling like they've joined a bacteria book club. Some fancy latrinas have running water from aqueducts, but this one's budget, so you're stuck with the communal soup. You shake your hands dry, splattering the guy next to you, who glares like you've insulted his ancestors. You mutter an apology and bolt, promising yourself you'll never eat with your hands again, but deep down, you know you will. Outside, the street's chaos feels almost refreshing after the latrina's claustrophobic camaraderie. A vendor waves a basket of chickpeas at you, but your coin purse is still sulking, so you keep moving. The latrina's not just a bathroom, it's a daily ritual for most Romans, rich and poor alike. In 125 CE, a new public latrina opened near the Forum, hailed as a marvel with marble seats and a fancy trough, but it still had the same sponge stick energy. Yours is no marble palace, it's a gritty, sweaty pit stop, and you're just glad to be out. Here's the quirky bit. Some Romans brought their own rags to the latrina, like they were too good for the communal sponge. The real flex, though. Moss. Yeah, if you were fancy, you'd show up with a handful of moss, nature's luxury toilet paper, and everyone would know you were living the dream. You're stuck with the tersorium, and it's not impressed by your hustle. There's even a rumor that some guy carved his initials into the stick, like it was a trophy, but you're not about to check for signatures. You're free, but the latrina's left its mark, not just on your sandals, but on your soul. Rome's a city of rules, and one of them is that you don't get to pee in peace. Public latrinas were everywhere, handling thousands daily, because insuli like yours weren't built for private bathrooms. The rich had home toilets, flushed by aqueducts, but you're not rich, so you get to bond with strangers over vinegar and bad life choices. Could you handle this every day? Nah, modern you would be designing a porta-potty startup by noon, begging for a world with plumbing and personal space. The street's still buzzing, with carts rattling and vendors shouting like they're auditioning for a tragedy. You're tempted to grab a crust of bread from a nearby stall, but your stomach's still reeling from the latrina's aroma. The city doesn't care about your discomfort, it's too busy being Rome, building aqueducts, conquering lands, and pretending its sanitation's under control. You're just a laborer, dodging olive pits and sciatica rants, trying to survive a morning that feels like a prank. For now, you've escaped the latrina's social club, but the day's got more traps waiting, and they're not handing out membership cards. You're stumbling out of the public latrina in Rome, 125 CE, still haunted by the tersorium and the olive-chewing guy who wouldn't stop staring. The street's a chaotic swirl of vendors, carts, and stray dogs, and the air's a punishing mix of fish sauce, smoke, and regret. Your tunic's a mess, your sandals are holding a grudge, and your stomach's growling like it's ready to file a formal complaint. It's late morning, and you haven't eaten since yesterday's sad lentil mush. Time for breakfast, but don't get excited, Rome's not serving avocado toast or frothy cappuccinos. You're about to face a meal that's less farm-to-table, and more survive to noon. You shuffle toward a public fountain, one of those stone basins fed by Rome's aqueducts, where folks like you gather to eat, gossip, or just glare at the world. The fountain's crowded with laborers, mothers juggling kids, and a guy who's definitely selling knockoff amulets under his cloak. The water's cold but questionable, with a faint metallic tang, thanks, lead pipes, forcing you to weigh dehydration against slow poisoning. You splash your face, hoping to rinse off the latrina's vibe, but the water just smears the grit around. You're not clean, you're just wetter, and somehow that's worse. Breakfast is whatever you've got, which isn't much. You fish a chunk of panis rusticus from your pouch, a dense, gritty bread that's been sitting there since yesterday. It's the Roman staple for folks like you, baked in communal ovens and sold by taberni that don't care about your budget. This loaf's so tough it could double as a doorstop, and every bite feels like chewing gravel. Your teeth ache just looking at it, because the flour's mixed with bits of millstone, giving your molars a workout nobody asked for. Historians debate whether this gritty bread was a dental disaster or just a fact of life, but you're pretty sure your dentist would faint. You squat by the fountain, balancing the bread on your knee, and pair it with a swig of watered-down wine from a clay flask. It's not a fine vintage, more like vinegar's grumpy cousin, but it's safer than the fountain water, which has you side-eyeing every ripple. No coffee, no eggs, no bacon to brighten your mood. If you're lucky, you might drizzle a drop of garum, that fishy sauce Romans love, but your garum days are few and far between. Today, it's just bread and wine, and calling it breakfast feels like an insult to meals everywhere. You chew slowly, partly to savor it, partly because rushing might chip a tooth. The fountain's a social hub, but nobody's in a great mood. A woman nearby's breaking her bread into pieces for her kid, who's whining about wanting figs, a laborer's muttering about his foreman, and the amulet guy's pitching Lucky Charms to anyone who'll listen. You try to blend in, but your stomach's louder than the street vendors, and every bite of bread feels like a personal challenge. You're surrounded by Rome's working class, all of you scarfing down the same sad meal, dreaming of a life where food doesn't fight back. The rich are probably eating dormice or peacock tongues in their villas, but you? You're stuck with the loaf that time forgot. Here's the quirky bit. This bread's so dense some Romans used it as a plate, piling on lentils or cheese, then eating the dish itself. Yours is too stale for that trick, but you're half tempted to try, if only to feel briefly fancy. There's even a rumor that bakers carved curses into loaves to ward off thieves, but your bread's only curse is its texture. You check for hidden spells, just in case, but all you find is more grit and a vague sense of betrayal. You glance at a nearby stall, where a vendor's hawking chickpea fritters, their golden crusts sizzling in a pan. The smell's divine, like a hug you can't afford, but one fritter costs more than you earn in a morning. You linger, sniffing the air like a stray dog, until the vendor shoos you away with a glare. You're not alone, half the fountain crowd's eyeing the stall, wallets as empty as their stomachs. In 125 CE, a grain shortage spiked bread prices, leaving folks like you to ration crumbs while senators hoarded the good stuff. You don't know about the shortage yet, but you feel it in your coinless pouch. The wine's gone, leaving a sour aftertaste that matches your mood. You choke down the last of the bread, spitting out a bit of stone that snuck in, and your teeth are already filing for workers' comp. You're not full, just less empty, which is the best you can hope for. The fountain's still buzzing, with kids splashing and laborers grumbling, but you're ready to move on. Work's calling, and it's not the kind of job with a break room or paid leave. You're a bricklayer or porter, hauling Rome's empire one sweaty load at a time, and breakfast was just the warm-up. Could you hack this meal every day? Nah, modern you would be rioting for a smoothie by now, Googling how to invent cereal on a phone that's centuries away. Rome's not built for comfort, it's built for endurance, and you're just another cog in its gritty machine. The city's awake, carts rattling, vendors shouting, and the sun's climbing, turning the air into a sticky soup. You wipe your hands on your tunic, adding to its collection of stains, and brace for the day. Breakfast's done, but it's left you with garum breath and a grudge against bread. The street's waiting, and it's got no sympathy for your hunger. You're trudging through Rome's chaotic streets in 125 CE, stomach barely pacified by that gritty bread and sour wine you called breakfast. The city's a sweaty, noisy beast, with carts rattling, vendors yelling about figs, and a stray goat giving you the side eye. Your tunic's a stained disaster, your sandals are basically cardboard, and the latrina's sponge stick trauma lingers like a bad breakup. It's midday, and you're not headed for a cozy cubicle or a lunch break with Wi-Fi. No, you're a laborer in Rome's relentless machine, and work's about to grind you down like that bread ground your teeth. Let's dive into the misery of your daily hustle. You're a bricklayer, or maybe a porter, one of the countless grunts keeping Rome's empire upright. Your worksite's a half-built insula across town, because apparently Rome needs more death trap apartments. You weave through the streets, dodging a fishmonger's cart and a kid tossing pebbles at pigeons. The air's thick with dust, smoke, and the faint whiff of garum gone bad, and every step feels like wading through a soup of heat and despair. Your foreman's waiting, a guy with a voice like a busted trumpet and a temper that says he hates his life more than you hate yours. You're already late, and in Rome, late means docked pay or a swift kick to your dignity. The worksite's a mess of splintery scaffolds, cracked stones, and workers shouting over the clang of hammers. Your tools are a joke, a shovel that's more splinters than wood, a trowel that's seen better days, and no gloves or helmets because safety's a future problem. You're hauling bricks under the sun, each one heavier than your life choices, while the foreman barks orders like you personally insulted his ancestors. Show up late again, and you're not just losing coins, you're risking a beating, because Roman bosses aren't exactly HR compliant. Women work too, weaving cloth or hauling baskets nearby, juggling kids and glares from the same foreman. Everyone's in the grind, and nobody's getting a gold star. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, but it's like mopping a river. The bricks are rough, cutting your hands, and the dust's turning your throat into a desert. You're building Rome's glory, sure, but all you see is another insula that'll probably collapse before you're paid. Craftsmen have it rough too. Potters and smiths nearby are undercutting each other, desperate for contracts, while the rich hire slaves to do the same work for free. Historians still debate how much slave labor tanked wages for free workers like you, but you feel it in your empty pouch, where hope used to live. Here's the quirky bit. Your sandals, those flimsy strips of leather, are less footwear and more a cruel prank. They flap against the ground, offering zero support, like walking on a promise that's already broken. Some workers tie rags around their feet for extra cushion, but it's like bandaging a bad decision. There's even a story about a guy who traded his sandals for a loaf of bread, only to limp home and regret it. You're tempted, but your sandals are the only thing between your feet and Rome's filthy streets, so you keep flapping along. Work's not just physical, it's a mental slog. You're competing with every other laborer in this overcrowded city, and jobs are scarcer than a quiet moment in a latrina. You're paid daily if you're lucky, but one missed shift means no dinner, and Rome's not big on safety nets. In 125 CE, a collapsed scaffold near the Palatine killed a dozen workers, buried under shoddy beams while senators sipped wine nearby. You don't know that yet, but every creak of your scaffold feels like a warning. The city builds its aqueducts and temples on your sweat, but it won't cry if you fall. You're not alone in this grind. The worksite's packed with folks like you, all sweaty, sunburned, and silently cursing the gods. A guy next to you's muttering about quitting, but where's he gonna go? Rome's a trap. Too big to leave, too harsh to love. Women nearby are selling vegetables or weaving under awnings, their kids playing in the dust, and everyone's got the same tired eyes. You try to focus, stacking bricks with a rhythm that's almost meditative, but the foreman's yelling snaps you out of it. He's got a whip, and he's not afraid to use it, because motivation in Rome comes with bruises. Hey, you still awake? Or are you drifting off, dreaming of a 9 to 5 with coffee breaks and ergonomic chairs? If you're still with me, picture this. You're halfway through your shift, arms aching, throat dry, and the sun's not even thinking about setting. Lunch isn't a thing. Maybe you'll snag a crust later, but for now, it's just you, the bricks, and a growing grudge against architecture. Could you survive this? Nah, modern you would be filing a labor complaint by noon, begging for a world with unions and iced lattes. But Rome doesn't care about your feelings, it's too busy being eternal. You keep working, because stopping's not an option. The city's alive around you, with carts rumbling and vendors hawking wares, but it's a distant hum. Your world's this worksite, these bricks, this foreman who's decided you're his personal punching bag. You're building an empire, one sore muscle at a time, but all you want is a nap and a meal that doesn't fight back. The day's only half done, and you're already counting the hours until you can collapse on that lice-ridden mattress. For now, you hoist another brick, wipe the dust from your eyes, and keep going, because Rome's not waiting for anyone. You're staggering away from the worksite in Rome, 125 CE, arms aching from hauling bricks, your tunic soaked with sweat and dust. That foreman's voice still echoes in your skull, and your sandals are flapping like they're ready to quit before you do. The midday sun's turning the city into a giant oven, and your stomach's muttering about that sad breakfast of gritty bread. You're not headed home yet, work's only half done, and you need to cross Rome to pick up supplies or maybe just survive the streets. Buckle up, because Rome's roads are less stroll and more survival gauntlet, and you're about to dodge everything from carts to con artists. The street hits you like a slap, a swirling mess of noise, smells, and questionable life choices. Carts piled with amphory rumble by, wheels grinding cobblestones into dust that sticks to your skin like a bad tattoo. Vendors are screaming about figs, fish, and authentic charms that probably curse you faster than they bless. A stray dog sniffing a pile of something that's definitely not treasure, while a kid darts past, nearly knocking you into a gutter brimming with yesterday's garum and worse. The air's a toxic stew of smoke, urine, and rotting vegetables, so thick you're breathing history's worst perfume. You'd kill for a face mask, but Rome's about a millennium shy of PPE. There's no sidewalk, no crosswalk, no traffic lights, just a free-for-all where pedestrians are the bottom of the food chain. Wagons race through, drivers yelling like they own the place, and you're one misstep from becoming roadkill. You dodge a cart hauling wine jugs, only to nearly trip over a dead rat someone's politely covered with a rag, like that's hygiene. The streets are paved, sure, but they're slick with spills, olive oil, vomit, maybe blood from a brawl you missed. You're trying to buy lentils from a stall, but the vendor's arguing with a customer, and a stray goat's eyeing your pouch like it's lunch. Rome's chaos makes Black Friday look like a yoga retreat. Here's the quirky bit: a politician's parade might roll through any second, complete with off-key trumpets and a guy tossing coins to the crowd. It's a spectacle, sure, but it clogs the streets for hours, and those trumpets sound like a cat in a blender. You're half tempted to join the mob for a free sesterce, but last time, you got elbowed in the ribs and came home empty-handed. Some folks say these parades were Rome's way of keeping the poor distracted, and you're starting to believe it, because nobody's fixing the gutters while they're cheering for a senator's ego. You keep moving, but the street's a minefield. A thief's eyeing you from an alley, his grin saying he knows your pouch is lighter than your hopes. You clutch it tighter, because losing your last coin means no dinner, and Rome's not big on charity. Public spectacles are everywhere: street performers juggling fire, con artists selling magic herbs, or a brawl over who cut who in line. You sidestep a guy waving a fish like it's a sword, only to nearly crash into a cart that's tipped over, spilling lentils into the muck. The driver's cursing Jupiter, the crowd's laughing, and you're just trying not to cry over the wasted food. In 125 CE, a runaway chariot race in the Circus Maximus spilled into the streets, killing a dozen pedestrians when the crowd stampeded. You don't know that yet, but every near miss with a wagon feels like a dress rehearsal. Historians still argue over how many Romans died annually from street accidents. Some say hundreds, others thousands, but you're too busy dodging hooves to count. The city's roads were marvels, stretching across empires, but they're also death traps, and you're just a laborer trying not to be a statistic. You finally reach the stall for your lentils, but the vendor's prices are robbery, and he's not budging. You haggle, because that's the Roman way, but your heart's not in it. Too much dust in your lungs, too much noise in your head. You hand over your coins, muttering about inflation, and tuck the lentils into your pouch. The crowd's thickening, with shoppers, beggars, and a guy preaching about some new god nobody's heard of. You're tempted to stop, but work's waiting, and the foreman's whip doesn't negotiate. You turn back toward the worksite, sandals flapping, and pray you don't trip into a gutter. You're not alone in this madness. Rome's 1 million strong, and most of them are out here, shoving, shouting, surviving. Laborers like you, women balancing baskets, kids stealing apples. It's a city that never sleeps, even if you're desperate for a nap. The rich glide by in litters, slaves clearing their path, while you're stuck in the muck, dreaming. You're weaving back through Rome's chaotic streets in 125 CE, lentils tucked in your pouch, your tunic a sweaty canvas of dust and despair. The sun's roasting the city, turning cobblestones into hot plates, and your sandals are flapping like they're begging for retirement. The street's a circus of shouting vendors, runaway carts, and that one goat that's still giving you attitude. You're parched, your throat's a dusty relic, and the worksite's waiting, but first, you need water, and maybe a bath to scrub off the latrina's ghost and the street's grime. Rome's got aqueducts, sure, but getting clean's a whole ordeal, and it's not exactly a spa day. You head for a public fountain, one of those stone basins fed by Rome's fancy aqueducts, where folks gather to drink, wash, or just complain about life. The fountain's crowded with laborers like you, kids splashing, and a woman yelling at her dog for stealing a figure. The water's cold, but it's got a metallic tang. Thanks, lead pipes. That makes you wonder if you're drinking history or poison. You cup your hands, gulping fast, but the guy next to you's coughing into the stream, and now you're rethinking your life choices. These fountains are Rome's lifeline, but they're also a petri dish, and you're pretty sure you just swallowed someone's sneeze. You splash your face, hoping to rinse off the street's dust, but it just smears into a gritty paste. The water's not clean, nobody's chlorinating this stuff, and you're sharing it with half the neighborhood, including a kid who's dunking his feet like it's a kiddie pool. In 125 CE, a burst aqueduct near the Esquiline flooded streets, leaving thousands without water for days and turning fountains like this into muddy pits. You don't know that yet, but every murky ripple feels like a warning. Historians still debate how much lead from those pipes messed with Roman health. Some say it caused everything from gout to madness, but you're just trying not to choke on the aftertaste. Now, the bathhouse. You're sweaty, sticky, and smell like a mix of garum and regret, so you detour to a public therme. It's not the grand baths of Trajan, with their marble and mosaics. You're at a budget bath, a steamy stone box where hygiene's more hope than reality. You pay a quadrans, your last coin, because Rome loves bleeding you dry, and step inside. The air's thick, hot, and smells like wet wool and human soup. The bath's a big pool, water recycled through dozens of bathers, and there's no soap, no chlorine, just a murky stew that's seen more skin than a gladiator's sword. You wade in, dodging a guy who's scrubbing his armpits with way too much enthusiasm. The water's warm, but it's less soothing and more suspiciously slimy, with bits of who knows what floating by. You dunk your head, praying it's cleaner than the fountain, but a stray hair sticks to your cheek, and now you're questioning everything. Bathers are chatting like it's a bar, politics, chariot races, someone's sciatica, while a guy in the corner's trying to sell socks, because apparently, commerce never sleeps. You scrub with your hands, but without soap, it's like polishing a rock with a rag. You're not clean, you're just differently dirty. Here's the quirky bit. Some bathers bring their kids and dunk them like their laundry, splashing everyone nearby. It's chaos, but it's peak Rome. Why clean quietly when you can make it a family event? There's even a rumor that one guy lost his sandal in the bath and spent an hour diving for it, only to find a fish instead. You check your sandals, because losing them would be the final straw, and you're not ready to limp home barefoot through Rome's filth. The bath's not just about hygiene, it's a social flex. Rich folks hit private baths or fancy therme, but you're stuck with the masses, sharing water and germs like it's a team-building exercise. The lead pipes feeding these baths aren't helping. Some say they caused anemia or worse, but Rome's too busy building empires to care. You're starting to feel woozy, maybe from the heat, maybe from the lead, or maybe just from the guy next to you singing about Jupiter's love life. You climb out, dripping and slightly traumatized, and shake off the water like a dog, because towels are for senators. You're not refreshed, just less dusty, and your tunic's wet now, clinging like a bad decision. The bathhouse air's so steamy you're half-cooked, and the street's chaos feels almost cool by comparison. You're supposed to head back to work, but your body's begging for a nap, and your brain's stuck on that floating hair. Rome's aqueducts and baths are engineering marvels, but for you, they're just another hurdle in a day that's trying to break you. Could you handle this routine? Nah, modern you would be inventing bottled water by noon, Googling how to chlorinate a civilization on a phone that's pure fantasy. The street's waiting, with its carts, thieves, and endless noise. You're still thirsty, because the fountain water didn't cut it, and the baths left you with more questions than cleanliness. You're just a laborer, dodging sneezes and sock salesmen, trying to survive a city that's too big, too loud, too everything. The sun's still blazing, and your worksite's calling, but for a moment, you linger by the fountain, watching kids splash and wishing you could dunk your whole life in something cleaner. Rome's got other plans though, and they're not handing out spa vouchers. You're trudging through Rome's sweltering streets in 125 CE, still damp from that questionable bath, your tunic clinging like a clingy ex. The city's a relentless churn of carts, shouting vendors, and that one goat that's basically your nemesis now. Your sandals are flapping, your pouch is empty, and the worksite's waiting, but your body's got other complaints. That brick you hauled earlier left a bruise, your foot's throbbing from a stubbed toe, and your back's screaming from hours of bending. Pain's your new best friend in Rome, and there's no ibuprofen or ice packs to make it go away. Welcome to a world where suffering's a lifestyle, and stoicism's the only therapy you can't afford. Every step's a reminder that Rome's not built for comfort. You stub your toe on a cobblestone, because of course you do, and the pain's sharp enough to make you curse Jupiter's entire family. Your hands are raw from splintery tools, your knees ache from squatting at the fountain, and don't even think about that headache brewing from lead-tainted water. Childbirth's no picnic either. Down the street, a woman's screams echo from a tenement, where midwives are chanting but offering little else. Injuries are everywhere, a cart driver's limping from a crushed foot, a kid's crying over a scraped knee, and you're pretty sure your neighbor's cough is plotting something sinister. There's no pharmacy, no urgent care, just you and your pain, staring each other down like old enemies. You could try herbal smoke, some guy's burning sage nearby, swearing it dulls his toothache, but it smells like regret and probably just makes you dizzy. Other options? Chew some willow bark if you can find it, or drink enough watered-down wine to blur the edges. Mostly, you ignore it, because Rome doesn't stop for a sprained ankle. Infections are the real threat. A cut from a rusty trowel could turn you into a feverish mess, and nobody's invented antibiotics yet. You glance at your scraped hand, hoping it's not cursed, and keep moving. Enter Stoicism, Rome's favorite coping mechanism, preached by guys like Seneca who have the luxury of thinking about suffering instead of living it. The idea's simple: pain's inevitable, so suck it up and act noble. You're supposed to embrace discomfort like it's a quirky personality trait, because whining's for losers and gods reward grit. You try it, squaring your shoulders and pretending your toes not screaming, but it's hard when every step feels like a personal attack. Stoicism's everywhere. Laborers mutter it to push through shifts, mothers whisper it during labor, but you're not sure if it's wisdom or just survival dressed up fancy. Historians still debate whether Stoicism was a lifeline for the masses or propaganda for elites to keep you quiet, but you're leaning toward fancy excuse for no sick days. Here's the quirky bit: a splinter could be your downfall. Those tiny wooden traitors, lurking in your shovel or scaffold, could fester and turn a bad day into a bad month. Romans told stories of laborers dropping dead from cursed splinters, and you're half convinced your current one's got a vendetta. There's even a rumor that a guy carved his splinter into a tiny spear for revenge, but it's probably just tavern talk. You dig at it with your nail, wincing, and pray it doesn't stage a coup in your bloodstream. Pain's not just physical, it's mental. You're exhausted, broke, and dodging carts while your foreman's whip looms like a bad horoscope. In 125 CE, a riot broke out near the Aventine when workers, fed up with injuries and no pay, trashed a worksite. The vigiles cracked down, and heads rolled, literally for some. You don't know that yet, but every bruise feels like a spark for rebellion, even if you're too tired to light it. The city's built on your aches, but it won't pause for your limp or your fever dreams. You're not alone in this. Everyone's hurting: laborers with calloused hands, women balancing baskets and babies, even the vendor yelling about figs, who's rubbing his shoulder like it's betrayed him. Rome's a city of endurance, where pain's as common as dust and twice as clingy. You try the stoic thing again, telling yourself pain's just a visitor, not a landlord, but then you step on another cobblestone, and your toes filing for divorce. Could you hack this? Nah, modern you would be popping Advil and booking a chiropractor, Googling how to invent lidocaine on a phone that's pure fantasy. You keep walking, because stopping's not an option. The street's alive, with kids running, carts crashing, and that sage smoke guy now trying to sell you a healing charm. Your body's a map of aches, but work's waiting, and the foreman's not big on sympathy. You're just a laborer, hauling Rome's glory one bruise at a time, and stoicism's all you've got to keep the pain from winning. The sun's still high, the air's still thick, and your splinter's still plotting. For now, you grit your teeth, channel your inner Seneca, and limp toward the worksite, because Rome's not built on comfort, it's built on you. You're limping through Rome's sweaty streets in 125 CE, your body a roadmap of aches from that stubbed toe, splinter, and the general misery of being a laborer. The sun's still roasting the city, your tunic's a damp disaster, and the air smells like garum and bad decisions. That's stoic, grin and bear it, nonsense isn't cutting it, your scraped hands looking red, your headaches plotting a coup, and you're pretty sure that bathhouse gave you a new germ to call friend. Time to seek Roman medicine, but brace yourself. This isn't a trip to the ER with sterile tools and kind nurses. It's a wild ride through bloodletting, dung potions, and doctors who double as barbers. You head to a doctor's stall near the market, dodging a cart of wobbly amphorae and a kid chucking pebbles at pigeons. The stall's a rickety wooden setup, draped with herbs that smell like regret and staffed by a guy who looks like he's one bad day from joining a cult. He's your medicus, part healer, part hustler, and definitely not board certified. You show him your hand, hoping for a quick fix, but he squints like you've brought him a cursed artifact. Roman medicine's built on the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and he's muttering about your imbalance like it's your fault for not bleeding enough. You're already regretting this. He suggests bloodletting, because apparently that's the answer to everything from fevers to bad moods. He grabs a rusty blade, and you're wondering if you'd rather take your chances with the splinter. No anesthesia, no antiseptic. Just a quick slice while you bite a stick and try not to scream loud enough to scare the goats outside. If you're lucky, he'll use leeches instead, which he keeps in a jar like pets with bad attitudes. You decline, because losing blood feels like a downgrade from your current misery, but he's already pitching a potion made of garlic, honey, and, oh no, dung. You're not sure who's dung, and you're not asking. Here's the quirky bit. Crushed beetles are the hot new remedy, ground into a paste and slathered on wounds like it's gourmet skincare. The medicus swears it's divine, but you're pretty sure it's just bugs, and the thought of smearing insect goo on your hand makes you miss modern pharmacies. There's even a story about a guy who ate the paste by mistake and claimed it cured his limp, but you're not desperate enough to test that theory. You stick with a dab of honey, which at least smells better than the dung, and hope it doesn't attract ants or adventurous pigeons. If this doesn't work, you've got other options, none great. Surgery's a last resort, think saws, no painkillers, and a medicus who learned by practicing on goats. You'd scream into a wooden block while he digs out that splinter, assuming you don't pass out first. Or you could visit a temple of Asclepius, where you'd sleep and pray for a healing dream from the god. It's free, but the catch is you're banking on divine Wi-Fi, and the priests might just tell you to sacrifice a chicken. In 125 CE, a new Asclepius temple opened near the Tiber, drawing crowds desperate for miracles, but you're too broke for the pilgrimage and too cynical for the prayers. The medicus wraps your hand in a rag that's seen better days, muttering about balancing your phlegm like it's a life goal. You're out a few coins, still in pain, and now you smell like garlic and questionable life choices. Roman medicine's a mix of guesswork, superstition, and herbs that might help or might just make you sneeze. Some remedies work, honey's antiseptic, garlic's got bite, but others, like dung or beetle paste, are more placebo than cure. Historians debate whether temple dreams were spiritual breakthroughs or just sleep-deprived hallucinations, but you're leaning toward desperate vibes as you trudge away from the stall. You're not alone in this medical mess. The market's buzzing with folks seeking cures, a woman's buying herbs for her kid's fever, a laborer's limping with a wrapped ankle, and someone's chanting to Apollo for a toothache. Rome's a city of ailments, from lead-induced gout to infections bred in gritty streets. The rich have private doctors, but you're stuck with stall guy, whose bedside manner's as warm as a Tiber winter. Could you handle this? Nah, modern you would be demanding antibiotics and a second opinion, Googling how to invent penicillin on a phone that's pure fantasy. The street's still chaos, with vendors hawking figs and a cart nearly flattening a stray dog. Your hands throbbing under the rag, and you're half tempted to try the temple dream thing, if only for a nap. Work's waiting though, and the foreman's whip doesn't care about your medical drama. You're just a laborer, dodging leeches and beetle paste, trying to survive a city that heals with one hand and poisons with the other. The sun's dipping, casting long shadows, but your day's far from over. For now, you limp forward, praying the honey holds and the dung stays far, far away. You're dragging yourself through Rome's fading light in 125 CE, your hand still throbbing under that medicus rag, your tunic a sweaty archive of the day's grime. The sun's dipping, painting the city in a hazy orange glow, but the streets are still a chaotic mess of carts, vendors yelling about wilted leeks, and that cursed goat that's definitely stalking you. Work's finally done, your foreman's whip is on pause, and your stomach's roaring louder than a chariot race. It's time for dinner, Rome's big meal, but don't expect a gourmet spread. You're a laborer, and your feast is more survival than savor. Afterward, maybe some entertainment, but Rome's idea of fun is as gritty as it's bread. You shuffle back to your insula, dodging a street performer juggling torches and a kid who's definitely pickpocketing someone. Your third-floor room's waiting, still smelling like damp wool and pigeon attitude, but cooking's out. Fire's banned to keep the place from turning into a Roman bonfire. Instead, you head to a ground-floor papina, a greasy spoon where laborers like you cram in for cheap eats. The place is a smoky, sweaty box, lit by flickering oil lamps and packed with folks shouting over each other. The air's thick with the smell of garum, boiled lentils, and something that's probably a health code violation in a future century. You squeeze onto a bench, elbow to elbow with a guy who smells like he bathed in fish sauce and a woman arguing about chariot race bets. Your dinner's a bowl of lentil pottage, a watery mix of beans, barley, and whatever herbs the cook could scrounge. It's bland, with a gritty texture that reminds you of breakfast's evil twin, but it's hot, and that's a win. You've got a chunk of Panis rusticus to dip, still tough as a brick, and if you're lucky, a drizzle of garum for flavor. No meat, pork's for the rich, and your budget's screaming vegetarian, whether you like it or not. You chew slowly, because rushing might cost you a tooth, and the medicus already has your last coin. Here's the quirky bit: your spoon's a luxury. Most folks eat with their hands, scooping pottage like it's finger paint, but you've got a chipped clay spoon you guard like a family heirloom. There's a rumor some guy traded his spoon for a night with a tavern dancer, only to regret it when he had to eat soup with his sandal. You clutch yours tighter, because dignity's in short supply, and you're not about to slurp lentils like a stray dog. The papina's no fine dining, but it's lively, someone's singing off-key about Venus, and a guy's trying to sell knockoff amulets between bites. You're tempted to splurge on wine, but it's the cheap stuff, more vinegar than vintage, and your pouch is lighter than your hopes. You stick with Posca, a sour mix of water and vinegar that's barely potable but safer than the Tiber's finest. The meal's not filling, just enough to quiet your stomach's rebellion, and you're already dreading tomorrow's repeat. In 125 CE, a grain riot erupted near the Subura when bread prices spiked, leaving Popinus like this looted and laborers starving. You don't know that yet, but every overpriced spoonful feels like a personal attack. Dinner's done, and now it's entertainment time, if you can call it that. You're too broke for the Colosseum's gladiator shows or the Circus Maximus races, where the rich bet fortunes and scream like it's their job. Instead, you wander to a street corner where a storyteller's spinning tales about Hercules for a small crowd. He's dramatic, waving his arms like he's fighting a lion, but his voice is hoarse, and you're pretty sure he's making half of it up. The crowd's into it though, tossing coins when he lands a good line, and you linger, because it's free and beats staring at your insula's crumbling walls. Other options? A tavern game of dice, but you're terrible at it, and the last guy who lost big ended up selling his tunic to settle the debt. Or there's a poet nearby, reciting love verses to a bored audience, but his rhymes are worse than the pottage, and you'd rather not cry in public. Historians debate whether these street performances were cultural gems or just cheap distractions for the poor, but you're leaning toward desperate vibes as you watch a kid heckle the storyteller for skipping the juicy bits. You're not alone in this. The papina's packed with laborers, weavers, and shopkeepers, all scarfing down lentils and chasing fleeting fun. Rome's a city of spectacle, but for you, it's small moments, bad pottage, worse wine, and a storyteller who's one bad gig from quitting. Could you handle this nightly grind? Nah, modern you would be ordering takeout and binging Netflix, Googling how to invent pizza on a phone that's pure fantasy. The city's alive, with torchlight flickering and drunks singing, but you're beat, your hands still sore, and your bed's calling, even if it's just straw and lice. You trudge back to the insula, the storyteller's voice fading behind you. The streets are quieter now, but still humming with late-night hawkers and stray dogs. Your dinner's sitting heavy, your spoon's safe, and you're dreaming of a world with forks and actual flavor. Work's tomorrow, and Rome's not slowing down for your aches or your empty pouch. For now, you climb the creaky stairs, dodge a pigeon that's claimed your doorway, and collapse, hoping for a dream that's better than your day. You're climbing the creaky stairs to your third-floor insula in Rome, 125 CE, the weight of the day dragging at your bones. That lentil pottage from the Popina sits heavy in your gut, your tunic's a sweaty relic, and the medicus rag on your hand smells like garlic and broken promises. The city's finally quieting, the vendor's shouts fading to a distant hum, though a drunk's still singing about Venus somewhere below. You dodge a pigeon that's claimed your doorway like it's paying rent and stumble into your room, ready to collapse. Sleep's the goal, but in Rome, even that's a fight and dreams? They're a whole other mess, full of gods, omens, and your brain's bad fanfiction. Your bed's a straw mattress, thin as a politician's excuse, stuffed with lumps that poke like they've got a personal grudge. No pillows, no blankets, just a threadbare cloak you drape over yourself, hoping it blocks the draft from the cracked window. The room's a sauna of damp wool, stale garum, and the neighbor's endless coughing, which you're pretty sure is auditioning for a plague. You lie down, and the straw crunches like it's mocking you, jabbing your ribs while a stray louse tickles your neck. You'd kill for a memory foam mattress or a white noise machine, but Rome's idea of cozy is surviving the night without the insula collapsing. Sleep's not easy when the city's still muttering outside. A cart rumbles by, wheels grinding cobblestones, and someone's yelling about a lost sandal like it's a national crisis. Your neighbors aren't helping, one's chanting to Juno, another's arguing with his wife, and the walls are so thin you're basically part of their marriage. You close your eyes, trying to block it all out, but your body's a chorus of complaints. Your bruised toe throbs, your splinters plotting revenge, and that pottage is staging a revolt in your stomach. You're exhausted, but sleep's playing hard to get, like a date who keeps canceling. Dreams are a big deal in Rome. They're not just brain static, they're messages from the gods or omens of doom, depending on who you ask. You finally drift off, and your dream's a feverish mess. You're hauling bricks for Jupiter, but they keep turning into pigeons that fly away, leaving you to dodge your foreman's whip. Romans take this stuff seriously. Dream interpreters charge good money to decode whether your pigeon brick saga means fortune or a bad harvest. You'd rather not know, because last time you dreamed of fish, your pay got docked, and you're not ready for more cosmic bad news. Here's the quirky bit. Some Romans slept with garlic under their pillow, swearing it scared off bad dreams like a vampire-repelling charm. You're tempted, but you already smell like the medicus potion, and adding more garlic feels like surrendering to the stench. There's even a story about a guy who dreamed of a talking goat that predicted his promotion, only to wake up and find his actual goat had eaten his sandals. You check your sandals, just in case, and pray your dreams stick to pigeons, not prophetic livestock. Sleep's not just rest, it's survival. A bad night means you're dragging through tomorrow's work, and the foreman's whip doesn't care about your insomnia. In 125 CE, a fire swept through an insula near the Quirinal, sparked by a lamp left burning, trapping sleepers in their beds. You don't know that yet, but every creak of the floorboards feels like a warning, and you're half convinced your lamp's plotting arson. Historians debate whether dream interpretation was a spiritual practice or a con to fleece desperate Romans, but you're too tired to care. You just want 5 hours without a pigeon or a coughing neighbor. You're not alone in this sleep struggle. Every insula tenant's tossing on their own lumpy mattress, cursing the noise, the bugs, and the gods who didn't invent earplugs. The rich have cushy beds with wool stuffing, but you're stuck with straw and stoic grit, dreaming of a world where sleep doesn't feel like a wrestling match. Your neighbor's cough is now a full-on symphony, and a stray dog's barking outside like it's auditioning for the Colosseum. Could you handle this nightly grind? Nah, modern you would be chugging melatonin and buying a sleep app, Googling how to invent box springs on a phone that's pure fantasy. You drift back into a shallow sleep, your dream shifting to a latrina where the tersorium's chasing you, which is honestly worse than the pigeons. You wake with a jolt, heart pounding, and realize it's still dark. The city's quieter now, just the occasional cart and a distant owl, but your mattress is still waging war, and your cloak's slipped off, leaving you shivering. You pull it back, curl up, and try again, because morning's coming, and Rome doesn't care if you're rested or haunted by rogue sponges. For now, you're just a laborer, battling straw and omens, hoping for a dream that doesn't predict another day of lentils and whips. You're awake again in your third-floor insula, Rome, 125 CE, the straw mattress still waging war on your spine. That tersorium-chasing dreams left you rattled, and the neighbor's cough is now a full-blown opera, echoing through walls thinner than a politician's promise. Dawn's creeping through the cracked window, painting your room in a sickly gray light, and the city's stirring with carts rattling and early vendors yelling about figs. Your body's begging for more sleep, but Rome's gods don't care about your REM cycle. It's time for morning rituals, because in this city, religion's not optional. It's a daily chore, like dodging goats or surviving the latrina. You stumble to your feet, brushing off a louse that's taken up residence in your cloak, and head for the tiny shrine in the corner of your room. It's a chipped clay statuette of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, flanked by 2 stubby candles that smell like regret and wax. Every Roman's got a shrine like this, even in a dump like your insula, because skipping prayers is like inviting Jupiter to smite your lunch. You mutter a quick plea for protection, tossing a pinch of stale bread as an offering, because you're too broke for anything fancier. The bread lands crooked, and you're half convinced Vesta's judging you, but you're not about to argue with a goddess before breakfast. Religion's everywhere in Rome, woven into the air like the smell of garum and street muck. You're not just praying for yourself, Your prayers cover the emperor, the city, and probably that pigeon that's still squatting in your doorway. Downstairs, your neighbors burning herbs to honor Juno, the smoke sneaking through the floorboards and making your eyes water. You'd love to tell her to chill, but angering Juno's like signing up for a year of bad luck, and you've got enough problems with your splinter and that medicus rag. You pull on your tunic, still damp and reeking of yesterday, and head out, because the gods expect you to show up for life, not just prayers. The streets already buzzing, and religion's in the details. A vendor's sprinkling salt on his stall, muttering to Mercury for good sales, while a woman tosses wine into the gutter for the Laras, the household spirits who probably don't appreciate the Tiber's finest. You pass a small temple to Janus, its doors open, and you nod respectfully, because two-faced gods don't mess around. You're tempted to pray for a better mattress, but that feels like pushing it, so you stick to asking for no cart accidents today. Romans don't just worship, they bargain, bribing gods with vows or offerings to keep the cosmic scales tipped in their favor. Here's the quirky bit. Some folks carry tiny god statues in their pouches, like divine action figures, for on-the-go prayers. You've seen a guy whip out a mini Mars during a dice game, begging for a lucky roll, only to lose his tunic anyway. You don't have one, your pouch is already stuffed with lentils and grudges, but you're half tempted to borrow a neighbor's Venus figurine, if only to charm your way out of the foreman's whip. There's even a rumor that a baker carved a loaf into Jupiter's face for a festival, only for a dog to eat it, which everyone agreed was a bad omen. Public rituals are a bigger deal. In 125 CE, a grand procession for Ceres, goddess of grain, clogged Rome's streets, with priests chanting and crowds tossing barley to ward off famine. You weren't there, too busy hauling bricks, but you felt the ripple when bread prices dipped for a week, a rare win for your empty pouch. Today's no festival, but you pass a priest in white robes, sprinkling wine on an altar, and you keep your head down, because priests have a knack for spotting impious types like you, who'd rather sleep than sacrifice a goat. Historians debate whether these rituals unified Rome or just distracted the poor from their hunger, but you're leaning toward fancy excuse to burn good wine as you dodge a spilled offering. You're not alone in this divine grind. Every Roman's juggling gods like a bad circus act. Vesta for home, Jupiter for power, Mercury for coin, and don't forget the emperor, who's basically a god since he didn't die in a coup yet. Your neighbor's chanting louder now, and a kid's tying a ribbon to a street shrine for luck, probably because he stole an apple. Even the rich are at it, offering silver to temples while you're stuck with breadcrumbs and vibes. Could you handle this daily devotion? Nah, modern you would be sleeping through alarms and Googling how to automate prayers on a phone that's pure fantasy. The streets picking up, with carts rumbling and a vendor waving leeks like they're sacred relics. Your prayers are done, but the gods are still watching, ready to zap you for skipping a ritual or tripping over a shrine. You're just a laborer, dodging omens and offerings, trying to survive a city that demands faith as much as sweat. The worksite's calling, and your splinter's still throbbing, but for a moment, you pause by the Janus temple, whispering one last plea for a day without whips or runaway carts. Rome's gods don't answer directly, but the city's humming, and that's all the sign you're getting. You're trudging through Rome's bustling streets in 125 CE, the morning sun already turning the cobblestones into a skillet. Your tunic's a stained wreck, your sandals are flapping like they're planning a mutiny, and that splinter's still throbbing under the medicus rag. The city's alive with carts rattling, vendors hawking leeks, and the faint chant of priests from a nearby temple. You've just mumbled your prayers to Vesta, but the gods aren't helping with your empty pouch or the foreman's whip waiting at the worksite. As you dodge a stray dog and a kid stealing figs, you're reminded of Rome's real ruler. The social hierarchy, a brutal pecking order where you, a laborer, are basically the dirt under a senator's sandal. Rome's society is a pyramid, and you're scraping the bottom with the other plebs, laborers, shopkeepers, and anyone else too broke to bribe their way up. Above you are the equestrians, rich enough to own horses and egos, and at the top, the senators, strutting in togas that cost more than your life. Then there's the emperor, Hadrian, who's basically a god with better real estate. You see it everywhere. A senator's litter glides by, carried by slaves who look as tired as you feel, while you're dodging their entourage to avoid a whipping. You keep your head down, because eye contact with the elite is like asking for a tax audit. The street's a living map of this hierarchy. A wealthy woman in a silk stola sweeps past, her slaves juggling baskets of fruit you'll never afford, while you're clutching your lentils like they're gold. A freedman runs his shop nearby, acting superior because he's not a slave anymore, but he's still bowing to equestrians who sneer at his greasy apron. Slaves are everywhere, hauling goods or cleaning gutters, their eyes blank from a life of orders. You're free, technically, but freedom's just a fancier cage when your wages barely buy pottage. Women like you work too, spinning wool, selling bread, but they're stuck lower, unless they're born rich or marry up, which isn't your story. Here's the quirky bit: your belt's a status symbol. Yeah, that ratty leather strap holding up your tunic says, pleb, louder than your calloused hands. Senators wear wide purple stripes on their togas, equestrians get fancy cloaks, but your belt's just a rope that's seen better days. There's a rumor a guy once tried to fake a senator's stripe with dye, only to get flogged when the rain washed it off. You tug your belt tighter, because it's all you've got, and you're not about to lose your pants in front of a patrician. This hierarchy's not just social, it's legal. A senator could kill you for bumping his litter and call it a bad day, while you'd be crucified for stealing his bread. You're a pleb, so you get free grain from the state, but it's a crumb compared to the feasts up in the Palatine. In 125 CE, Hadrian passed a law banning senators from marrying plebs, cementing the divide like a divine middle finger to your dreams of a rich spouse. You don't know that yet, but you feel it every time a toga wearer glares at you for existing. Historians debate whether this rigid system kept Rome stable or just crushed the poor under elite boots, but you're leaning toward boot crushed as you sidestep a senator's slave. You're not alone in this grind. The streets are packed with plebs like you, scurrying to avoid the elite while dreaming of a life with more than lentils and whips. A baker's cursing as an equestrian haggles him down, a woman's weaving under an awning, ignored by everyone, and a slave's hauling amphory, his back bent like it's carrying Rome itself. The rich don't see you unless you're in their way, and even then, it's just to yell. You're tempted to shout back, but that's a one-way ticket to a beating, so you keep moving, your belt creaking and your pride long gone. The work site's close, but you pass a public fountain where the hierarchy's on display. Plebs like you crowd around, gulping water, while a senator's slave pushes through to fill his master's jug, elbowing kids out of the way. You wait your turn, because fighting a slave's worse than fighting the senator. He's got no status to lose, and you've got no coins to spare. Could you handle this daily grovel? Nah, modern you would be starting a union and Googling how to invent equality on a phone that's pure fantasy. Rome's built on this pyramid, and you're just a brick at the bottom, hoping not to crumble. The sun's climbing, the air's thick with dust and garum, and the foreman's waiting to bark orders. You're just a laborer, dodging togas and dreaming of a world where your belt means something. The city's humming, with priests chanting, slaves sweating, and senators scheming, all locked in their place like you're locked in yours. You take a last swig from the fountain, wipe your mouth on your tunic, and trudge toward work, because in Rome, the hierarchy doesn't bend, and neither does your back. For now, you're just another pleb, keeping your head down and your lentils close, praying the gods don't let a senator trip over you. You're slogging through Rome's sweaty streets in 125 CE, the sun baking the cobblestones and your tunic a grimy testament to yesterday's labor. Your belt's creaking, your sandals are one flap from surrender, and that splinter's still throbbing under the medicus rag. The city's a chaotic hum of carts, vendors yelling about overpriced leeks, and a senator's litter gliding by like you're invisible. You're a pleb, a laborer hauling bricks for Rome's glory, and the social hierarchy's got you pinned under its boot. As you dodge a stray dog and a kid swiping apples, you pass a school, its open door spilling the drone of kids reciting Latin. Education's a world you'll never touch, because in Rome, reading's for the rich, and you're stuck with calluses instead of scrolls. Schools aren't for you, they're for the elite, the senator's sons and equestrians' brats who'll grow up to run the empire or at least fake it in a toga. You pause by the school, a cramped room where a dozen boys sit on benches, scratching wax tablets with styluses under the glare of a pedagogue who looks like he hates kids more than you hate your foreman. They're memorizing Homer or Cicero, their voices a monotone chant that's somehow more boring than your lentil pottage. You can't read a word, and writing's as foreign as a senator's kindness. For plebs like you, education's a luxury, like meat or a mattress that doesn't stab you in the night. Literacy's rare at your level. Maybe you recognize a few shop signs, crude graffiti or a tavern's wine jug symbol, but that's it. Your world's oral, stories from street performers, orders from the foreman, or prayers to Vesta you've memorized since you were a kid. The rich learn to read and write in Latin and Greek, mastering rhetoric to charm or bully their way through life. You're lucky if you can count your coins without using your fingers. Women have it worse. Education's mostly for boys, and girls like your neighbor's daughter are weaving wool, not words, unless they're born into a villa with private tutors. Here's the quirky bit. School kids used to get flogged for bad handwriting, the pedagogue's stick swinging like it's got a personal vendetta. You overhear a boy whining about a whack for smudging his tablet, and you're almost jealous. At least he's got a skill to mess up. There's even a rumor a kid once bribed his teacher with a stolen fig to skip the beating, only to get caught and flogged twice. You'd laugh, but your own hands are too scarred from bricks to hold a stylus, and you're not about to trade lentils for a lesson in pain. Education's not just about reading, it's power. A literate senator can draft laws or scam a contract, while you're stuck trusting a scribe who charges half your wages to read a debt notice. In 125 CE, Hadrian funded a new library in the Forum, stocked with scrolls you'll never see, a shiny toy for the elite while plebs like you beg for grain. You don't know that yet, but you feel it every time a toga wearer sneers at your ignorance, their words sharp as a whip. Historians debate whether Rome's low literacy rate, maybe 10%, stabilized the hierarchy by keeping plebs in the dark or just starved the empire of talent, but you're leaning toward kept you hauling bricks as you trudge past the school. You're not alone in this. The streets are packed with illiterate plebs, bakers, weavers, laborers, all surviving on grit and gossip, not scrolls. A woman selling bread nearby can't read the sign above her stall, but she knows every customer's sob story. A slave hauling amphory doesn't need letters to feel the weight of his chains. The elite don't care if you read, as long as you work, and the gods don't send literacy with their omens. You're tempted to eavesdrop on the school's lessons, but the pedagogue's glare says, keep moving, and you're not about to get a stick for curiosity. The worksite's waiting, but you linger by a fountain, where a scribe's reading a notice for a crowd of plebs too poor to learn. It's about taxes, because of course it is, and you're stuck trusting his word, hoping he's not skimming your last coin. Kids from the school run past, their tablets tucked under their arms, laughing like they've got a future that doesn't involve scaffolds or whips. Could you handle this locked-out life? Nah, modern you would be binging Khan Academy and Googling how to invent public schools on a phone that's pure fantasy. Rome's built on your sweat, not your smarts, and the hierarchy likes it that way. The sun's climbing, the air's thick with dust and garum, and the foreman's voice is already echoing in your head. You're just a laborer, dodging scribes and dreaming of a world where words aren't a luxury. The city's humming, with kids chanting, senators scheming, and plebs like you stuck in the grind. You take a last gulp from the fountain, wipe your mouth on your tunic, and head to work, because in Rome, ignorance isn't bliss, it's just another brick to carry. For now, you keep your head down, your lentils close, and your hopes far from the scrolls you'll never read. You're weaving through Rome's crowded streets in 125 CE, the midday sun turning the city into a sweaty furnace. Your tunic's a patchwork of dust and despair, your sandals are flapping like they're auditioning for freedom, and the medicus rag on your hand is a garlic-scented cry for help. The worksite's waiting, but you're passing the Forum, where Rome's economy hums louder than a chariot race. Carts groan under amphory, vendors shout about figs and knockoff charms, and a senator's slave glares like you've personally insulted his master's toga. You're a pleb, a laborer scraping by on lentils and grit, and Rome's trade machine doesn't care about your empty pouch or your throbbing splinter. It's too busy fueling an empire. The Forum's a chaotic bazaar, a living pulse of Rome's wealth. Merchants hawk spices from India, wine from Gaul, and olives that cost more than your weekly wage. Ships from Egypt dock at Ostia, unloading grain to keep plebs like you from rioting, while silk from China glitters in stalls you'll never afford. You dodge a cart piled with amphory, their garum stench strong enough to wake a coma, and nearly trip over a crate of pottery that's definitely not local. Slaves haul goods, their backs bent under sacks, while freedmen haggle like their lives depend on it. You're just trying to get through without losing your lentils to a pickpocket or your dignity to a spilled fish barrel. Money's the city's blood, and you've got barely a drop. Your coins are bronze sesterces, barely enough for pottage, while the rich flash silver denarii like it's pocket change. Barter's common too. You've traded a day's labor for bread before, but it's a hustle, and you're no match for the forum's shark-eyed traders. Shops line the streets, their signs painted with jugs or loaves, because most plebs can't read the fine print. You're paid daily if the foreman's feeling generous, but one bad shift means no dinner, and Rome's not big on safety nets. The empire's rich, sure, but that wealth's stuck at the top, trickling down about as well as Tiber sludge. Here's the quirky bit. Some traders use broken amphorae as receipts, scratching deals onto shards like ancient post-it notes. You see a merchant toss one to a customer, who stuffs it in his pouch like it's gold. There's even a story about a guy who kept his shards in a sack, only to trip and shatter his entire trade history in the forum. You're tempted to grab a shard for your lentils, but you'd probably just cut yourself, and the medicus has enough of your coins. You clutch your pouch tighter, because in Rome, everything's a transaction, even your last scrap of hope. Trade's not just local, it's global, and Rome's the greedy heart of it all. Aqueducts keep the city watered, roads bring goods from Britannia to Babylon, and ships risk pirates to haul luxuries for senators who don't know your name. But it's fragile. In 125 CE, a storm sank a grain fleet off Ostia, spiking bread prices and sparking riots in the Subura. You don't know that yet, but you feel it every time a vendor doubles the cost of barley, blaming supply issues while you starve. Historians debate whether Rome's trade networks made it unstoppable or overstretched, but you're leaning toward screwed the plebs as you sidestep a spilled crate of figs. You're not alone in this economic grind. The forum's packed with plebs like you, bakers, weavers, porters, all scrambling for coins while merchants and senators swim in silver. A woman selling bread haggles with a customer, her voice sharp as a blade, while a slave unloads wine jugs, his eyes dead from endless labor. The rich don't haggle, their slaves pay full price and sneer for free. You're tempted to barter your sandals for a fig, but they're the only thing keeping you from Rome's filthy streets, so you keep moving, your pouch lighter than your dreams. The worksite's close, but you pass a money changer's stall, where a crowd's swapping coins for a fee that'd make you cry. You've got no silver to trade, just a handful of sesterces and a grudge against inflation. A merchant's yelling about Egyptian grain, and you're reminded how your free pleb ration keeps you alive but never full. Could you handle this daily hustle? Nah, modern you would be day trading crypto and Googling how to invent unions on a phone that's pure fantasy. Rome's economy is a beast, and you're just a flea on its back, hoping not to get squashed. The sun's high, the air's thick with dust and garum, and the foreman's whip is calling. You're just a laborer, dodging merchants and dreaming of a world where a sesterce buys more than a bowl of grit. The city's humming, with ships unloading, coins clinking, and plebs like you stuck in the grind. You take a last glance at the forum, where a senator's buying silk while you're counting crumbs, and trudge to work, because in Rome, trade builds empires, but it's your sweat that pays the price. For now, you keep your head down, your lentils close, and your hopes far from the luxuries you'll never touch. You're trudging through Rome's chaotic streets in 125 CE, the sun scorching the cobblestones and your tunic a sweaty archive of dust and despair. Your sandals are flapping like they're plotting escape, your pouch holds nothing but lentils and grudges, and the medicus rag on your hand reeks of garlic and broken dreams. The forum's behind you, its trade bustle fading, but the worksite looms, where the foreman's whip waits like a bad horoscope. As you dodge a cart of wobbly amphorae and a kid swiping figs, you spot a vigil, Rome's night watchman, eyeing the crowd like a hawk. Law and order's no joke in this city, and for a pleb like you, one wrong step could mean a beating, or worse. Rome's laws are as rigid as the hierarchy pinning you to the bottom. You're a laborer, a pleb, free but barely, and the legal system's not your friend. Steal a loaf, and you're facing flogging or slavery. Bump a senator's litter, and you might not see tomorrow. The rich get lawyers and bribes. You get a swift kick and a date with the Tiber if you're lucky. The vigiles patrol the streets, mostly at night, doubling as firefighters and thugs who'd rather crack skulls than solve crimes. You keep your head down, because looking shifty near a vigil's like waving a red flag at a bull with a grudge. The street's a showcase of Rome's rough justice. A thief's getting dragged off by vigiles, his wrists bound, probably headed for a quarry or crucifixion if he's not connected. A vendor's yelling about a stolen amphora, but the vigiles don't care unless he's got coins to make them listen. Slaves have it worst. No rights, just punishments, from whippings to branding for running away. You're free, but freedom's a thin shield when a senator's word outweighs your life. Women like you face extra hurdles, your testimony's worth less, and if you're caught in a brawl, the law's more likely to blame your hysteria than the guy throwing punches. Here's the quirky bit: Romans love public shaming. A debtor might be paraded through the forum with a sign around his neck, crowds jeering like it's a chariot race. You see a guy shuffling past, his tunic marked with chalk, and you're half tempted to laugh, but your own debts are close enough to keep you quiet. There's even a story about a baker who got shamed for shorting bread, forced to wear his underweight loaf like a necklace until sunset. You clutch your lentils, praying you never end up as the forum's punchline. Justice isn't just street level, it's imperial. Hadrian's laws are strict, from banning pleb senator marriages to cracking down on tax dodgers. In 125 CE, a tax riot in the Aventine saw vigiles slaughter dozens of plebs, their bodies left as a warning to others. You don't know that yet, but every vigil's glare feels like a preview, and you're not about to test their patience. Courts exist, but they're for the elite, with magistrates who'd sooner dine with Jupiter than hear your case. For you, justice is staying invisible, because the law's a net that catches the poor and lets the rich slip through. Historians debate whether Rome's harsh laws kept the empire stable or just terrorized the masses into submission, but you're leaning toward terror as you sidestep a vigil's patrol. The system's rigged, senators bribe their way out, equestrians pull strings, and plebs like you eat the consequences. You're tempted to mutter a curse, but even that's risky. Slandering the emperor could land you in the arena, facing lions for Hadrian's amusement. Your only defense is keeping your nose clean and your pouch empty, because nothing screams, not worth robbing, like a laborer's budget. You're not alone in this legal tightrope. The streets are packed with plebs dodging trouble, bakers hiding short waits, weavers ducking tax collectors, and slaves praying their masters don't notice a cracked jug. A woman selling bread keeps her stall clear of vigiles, her eyes sharp for trouble, while a kid darts past, probably running from a petty theft. The rich stroll by, their slaves clearing the way, untouched by the law's heavy hand. You're just trying to reach the worksite without catching a vigil's eye, but every step feels like a gamble in a game you didn't choose. The worksite's close, but you pass a public execution notice carved on a stone tablet, announcing a traitor's death in the Colosseum. You can't read it, but the crowd's gossip fills you in, and you're glad it's not your name. The foreman's waiting, and the law won't save you from his whip if you're late. Could you handle this constant threat? Nah, modern you would be calling a lawyer and Googling how to invent Miranda rights on a phone that's pure fantasy. Rome's law and order is a machine, and you're just a cog, hoping not to get crushed. The sun's blazing, the air's thick with dust and garum, and the vigiles are still watching. You're just a laborer, dodging patrols and dreaming of a world where justice doesn't mean a whip or a noose. The city's humming, with merchants haggling, slaves sweating, and plebs like you stuck in the grind. You take a last glance at the forum, where a senator's arguing with a magistrate while you're counting steps to safety, and trudge to work, because in Rome, the law keeps order, but it's your fear that keeps you alive. For now, you keep your head down, your lentils close, and your hopes far from the vigiles clubs. You're stumbling through Rome's twilight streets in 125 CE, the day's weight clinging to you like your sweat-soaked tunic. The cobblestones are cooling, but your sandals are barely holding on, flapping like they're done with your nonsense. Your pouch is empty, save for a few lentils and a lifetime of grudges, and the medicus rag on your hand smells like garlic and defeat. The worksite's behind you, the foreman's whip a fading threat, but the city's still humming, vendors packing up, a drunk singing off-key, and a vigil's glare reminding you to stay invisible. You've survived another day as a pleb, dodging carts, senators, and Rome's brutal laws, and now it's time to limp back to your insula, reflect on this grind, and maybe dream of a life less punishing than this one. The street's quieter now, the forum's bustle replaced by flickering oil lamps and the occasional bark of a stray dog. You pass the fountain where you gulped lead-tainted water, the bathhouse where you traded a coin for questionable hygiene, and the popina where that gritty pottage still haunts your gut. Every step's a reminder of Rome's relentless cycle. Wake, pray, work, eat, sleep, repeat, all under the gods' watchful eyes and the empire's heavy boot. You're a laborer, a speck in this sprawling city, hauling bricks for Hadrian's glory while senators feast and vigiles prowl. Your splinters still throbbing, your back screaming, and you're pretty sure that goat from this morning is plotting revenge. Reflecting on the day, you're struck by how Rome's beauty, the aqueducts, the temples, the Colosseum, hides a brutal truth. It's a city built on your sweat, your aches, and the fear of stepping out of line. You prayed to Vesta for protection, but she didn't stop the foreman's whip. You scrubbed in the bathhouse, but you're still caked in dust. You ate your lentils, but your stomach's already growling. The hierarchy kept you low, the laws kept you scared, and the economy kept you broke. Yet here you are, still standing, still trudging, because plebs like you don't get to quit. Rome's a machine, and you're the grease, not the gears. Here's the quirky bit. Romans believed a sneeze could predict your fate. Sneeze left, bad luck. Sneeze right, good fortune. You sneezed this morning mid-prayer, and you're pretty sure it was left, which explains the cart that nearly flattened you and the pottage that tasted like despair. There's even a story about a guy who sneezed during a senator's speech and got exiled for disrupting divine favor. You stifle a sniffle, because the last thing you need is a vigil blaming your nose for Rome's next plague. It's absurd, but in a city where gods and omens rule, even your sinuses feel like a legal liability. This day wasn't just survival, it was a glimpse into Rome's soul. In 125 CE, Hadrian dedicated a new temple to Venus and Roma, a massive shrine to the city's divine roots, while plebs like you were too busy hauling stone to notice. You didn't see the ceremony, but you felt the ripple. Extra work, extra whips, extra prayers to keep the gods happy. Historians debate whether Rome's grandeur justified its cruelty, whether the empire's glory was worth the blood and sweat of plebs like you. Some say it built civilization, others say it crushed the poor to prop up the rich. You're leaning toward crushed, because your calluses and empty pouch don't feel like victory. You're not alone in this reflection. The streets are dotted with plebs like you. Bakers locking stalls, weavers folding cloth, slaves trudging home, all carrying the same weight of a city that demands everything and gives little back. A woman at the fountain rinses her hands, her face etched with the same exhaustion you feel. A kid darts by, clutching a stolen fig, his defiance the only spark in this grind. The rich are in their villas, sipping wine you'll never taste, while you're counting steps to your insula's creaky stairs. Rome's a paradox, a dazzling empire for some, a daily gauntlet for you. Could you handle this life, day after day? Nah, modern you would be ordering takeout, popping Advil, and Googling how to invent labor laws on a phone that's pure fantasy. You'd trade the Colosseum for a couch, the Tiber for a shower, and Hadrian's laws for a union rep. But there's a strange beauty in this struggle, a raw resilience in every pleb who keeps going despite the whips, the dust, and the gods' indifference. You're part of Rome's heartbeat, even if it's the pulse of the weary, the overlooked, the ones who built an empire without ever owning it. You reach your insula, the pigeon still squatting in your doorway like it's the landlord. The straw mattress waits, lumpy and vengeful, but it's yours, and that's enough for now. You collapse, the city's hum fading to a distant lullaby, carts creaking, a neighbor's cough, the soft chant of a late-night priest. Your day's done, and so's this tale, but Rome's still out there, churning through plebs and emperors, glory and grime. Close your eyes, let the straw poke your ribs, and drift off, because tomorrow's another day of lentils, whips, and sneezes you can't afford to get wrong. Sleep well, dear listener, and dream of a Rome where the plebs get a break. Good night.